Hey, this is Michael Romeo, and you're listening to Sonic Perspectives.
Hey everyone, this is Gonzalo here at Sonic Perspectives. Today, I have the pleasure of talking with a living, breathing guitar hero. You've heard him guest with Arion, you've heard him with Eidolon, you might have heard him within this moment, and perhaps you've even heard his own band, Symphony X. Mr. Michael Romeo, what an honor it is to talk to you.
Thanks, man. Yeah, great intro, dude. That was very cool.
Cool, thanks so much. So, first things first, it's been recently announced that Symphony X is going to be ending its dormancy very soon. And your bandmates have remained active in music during the hiatus. And you've decided that you're going to be putting out a solo album at this point. What's going on?
Yeah, well, like you said, the band kind of taking a little break last year, and the guys doing different things, so I decided to do this solo record. So I spent the time, and and I had been thinking about doing a solo record for years and just never really had the time. So like I was saying, when we decided to take this break, it was perfect opportunity for me to do this.
Well, I've heard Silent Assassins, I've heard Adrenaline Mob, I've heard Pinella solo stuff, and I've heard War of the Worlds Part 1, and I think that it's pretty clear who the heart and soul of Symphony X is.
Yeah, I mean, with the band, with Symphony X, I do most of the writing. And the solo record, yeah, obviously there's some similarities, but I really wanted the solo record to be different than the band, so when I first started writing, I had a pretty clear direction of what I wanted to do. I wanted it to be more orchestral with the guitar and very cinematic sounding. And, yeah, obviously it's heavy and it's a little progressive and, melodic and some of those things. But, yeah, I did want it to be its own thing.
Now, we're going to get into some of the outside non-metal sounds that you've incorporated into War of the Worlds Part 1, but you said that you wanted to do things a little differently. Like, how else have you, have you done that on this album?
I mean, probably the main thing is, just incorporating that symphonic element throughout. And in a very film score kind of way. I mean, I'm a big fan of film music and, 20th century classical music like Stravinsky and Holst and some of those composers. And I think that's why I like John Williams and the music from Star Wars so much, is because there's so much of that in there. And I really like that. And I wanted to kind of incorporate that into this thing, of course, along with the the heavy riffs and the Sabbath and the Pantera influence, and as well as all the guitar stuff. But I also wanted to do something a little different, maybe some electronic elements. And I was talking to a buddy of mine who does that kind of thing, and it's like, what if we tried to do something that was metal, dubstep, orchestral, trying to throw all these things together. So, I think with the solo record, you can kind of get outside the box and do something a little different. Just have fun, be creative, and try new things.
So, like, when you were writing the orchestral parts, and there's a lot of that, how do you do that? Do you, take the approach of, a traditional composer, or do you write on the guitar and then work with that? How do you do that?
I mean, some of it, yeah. I'll sit down with paper and pencil. If it's a little bit more involved, yeah, because I think for me it's easier to see it and then start putting it together. But yeah, I mean, it could even be on guitar, maybe just a theme and noodling around on the guitar, and you kind of come up with a melody, and then you start, breaking that apart. Every song's a little different.
And it's really, really clear that you've taken War of the Worlds 1 every bit as seriously as you've ever taken Symphony X. How long have you been?
You have to, man. You have to, man. You got to be. If you're gonna do something, you got to do the best you can.
How long has this been? Has this music been bubbling up inside you?
Well, when I really started to write and decided that I was going to do this a year ago, whatever, that's really when I started writing. But I did kind of go back to some older ideas. Over the years, maybe I have a riff that I put aside or a melody or something. And I did go back and look at some of that older stuff. It's like, some of it's pretty cool. But I think once I was really writing and I had the idea with the title War of the Worlds, and I knew I was going to do this orchestral thing, and it was going to have that sci-fi space vibe and some of the electronic stuff in there, then it was all new. Then it was like, okay, I'm just going to start writing all new stuff, and you get inspired and the new ideas are coming. So that's kind of how that went down.
So did I just understand you correctly that you first decided to commit to this album about a year ago, and it's already done and ready to go?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I started. I got to go back to the end of 2016 because the band, we had some commitments and some touring. And right at 2017, let me get the year straight here. The beginning of 2017 is when I started. That's really when I started. And I think I was done writing. I probably spent 5 months. So by the summer or the end of the spring, we were already working on the drums and working on the guitars throughout the summer. And, I think we finished everything up, about a year later. So now obviously, there's time to get the artwork together over the last couple months. But, the writing, for as much material as there is, for me, it relatively went quick. And there was 2 records I had written because, once I started, the ideas just start flowing, and I spent however many months writing, and then at the end, I'm like, okay, I think I have enough stuff. And then I kind of go back and look at, and it's like almost 2 hours of music. And we did just go ahead and start tracking everything. We had done the drums for everything and the rhythm guitars and the bass. So, technically we were working on 2 records at once. And once we got to the lyrics and the singing, and I was working with my buddy Rick with the vocals, it was a little overwhelming. There was so much, and that's when we decided, okay, let's do part 1 and part 2. Let's concentrate on the first batch of songs, and then down the road we'll come back to the second batch.
So 2 albums of material, and the only thing that's left on part 2 is the vocals?
Oh, yeah, a couple vocals on some songs, guitar solos, and, some of the orchestral stuff, it's got to be done properly, and that kind of thing, odds and ends. That's where a lot of the time goes, too, is just, creating that, with samples and building that orchestral sound. It just takes time. You try to make it as believable as possible and try to make it breathe, like a human being, try to make it sound real. And, that eats up a lot of time.
I think
but
that
it's great, man. I have a lot of fun doing it. Obviously doing all the guitar stuff is fun, and even that's cool. You're still creating stuff. You're still making music. It's just a little different way of doing it.
Well, I think that the fact that you've managed to do that in just under a year and a half speaks volumes about your work ethic.
I'm a knucklehead, man. I'll work all day, man, and get a big cup of coffee and just have at it, Going back, once I kind of had the idea of this thing and I knew what I wanted to do, every day I'd come down to the studio and there would just be more ideas coming. So, for me, that's a big part of it, is kind of finding an idea and a direction and then, just going with it. And then the ideas just kind of take over. It just kind of takes on a life of its own.
What a great problem to have.
It doesn't always happen that way, man. Don't be fooled. Sometimes I'll just sit here, with my thumb up my ass, and there's just nothing happening, and everybody gets writer's block.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to do? But the majority of the time, it's like, okay, I'm feeling it, and things are getting done.
You just alluded to your instrument, the guitar. You are one of the most accomplished guitar players I have ever heard.
Wow, fantastic. Thanks, man.
And like, I'm curious as to what is the most challenging thing you've ever done on your instrument and what you're trying to master these days.
Oh man, I don't know. I think now it's more just about coming up with original riffs. And, you know, I mean, when I was younger, there were so many guys I was listening to and you know, trying to, you know, just be competent on my instrument and work towards those guys. You know, Randy Rhoads was like my first big influence, and, you know, and then Yngwie, of course, and, you know, so many great players. So I think all those years of practicing and, you know, just getting the technique and getting the theory, when I was younger, that was the thing. But now I think it's like, okay, you know, I think I can pretty much play what's in my head. I think now it's about, okay, well, what am I going to do with it? You know, so it's coming up with some riffs that are cool, or working on phrasing of a solo as opposed to a technique. You know, you try to incorporate all the techniques, but you still try to do something that's, you know, maybe melodic or has a good flow to it. Yeah, I think it's more, for me now, it's more about the writing.
And I think that kind of leads up to something else I wanted to ask you. I mean, this, for a solo album, you know, that used to mean like Shredfest and an excuse to noodle around and, you know, like a wank fest. And this is not that. Like, it's an incredibly versatile and fluid record, and the songs are solid and well thought out. You know, these are well-written songs that just happen to have a lot of flair.
Yeah, and that just goes back to what we were just talking about. It's like, you know, maybe if I did this, you know, 20 years ago, it would probably be a lot of noodling, and there's nothing wrong with noodling. I mean, I still love all that stuff. But, you know, I'm kind of a song guy, and I knew I wanted there to be this orchestral element and this electronic element. So I wanted it to be about all that stuff. It's like, yeah, you know, there's solos that have the chops, and even the riffs have the chops. But I think it's just doing it in a tasteful way.
Symphony X has kind of later in, you know, on its most recent albums, has kind of shifted a little bit away from the mythological stuff. And especially like on Iconoclast, is more of a sci-fi theme going there. Is War of the Worlds an extension of that fascination?
I mean, I think I always like that. I always like that kind of thing. Even, you know, this demo solo thing I did, you know, back when I was really young, and it wasn't really my first solo CD. This one really is. But, I'd done a demo, and our Japanese label released it. And even that, I mean, everything was kind of based on works of Edgar Allan Poe. So I think, you know, for me, I was always about finding something that I could kind of represent with music. You know, and the same thing with the band. And, yeah, you know, the mythology stuff, it's like, yeah, if you do it too much, if you do anything too much, man, it just gets old. So you try to find different things. You know, like you said, Iconoclast and Paradise Lost, you know, those are those kind of things. But Underworld is a little bit of the mythology thing, too.
Yeah.
Just a little, you know, it's a little different. There's a little Dante in there, Dante's Inferno. So, yeah, I think it's about just finding a cool idea and something musically that you can say something with. And with this solo record with War of the Worlds, it was totally that. You know, in the beginning, I was looking for ideas. I knew I wanted the music to be a certain way. And I just remember, like, looking through books or trying to find some kind of topic or title, and came across War of the Worlds, and I thought, all right, that'd be perfect. You know, because I do want that cinematic, epic space, you know, a la Star Wars kind of thing. And that just seemed like a good title to work with. And when we got into doing the lyrics, even that worked, because when we first started, it was like, man, you know, you don't want to sing about Martians and ray guns and all that kind of shit. You know what I mean? That get kind of corny quick. But we talked, it's like, you know, well, the War of the Worlds, maybe it could be the War of the Worlds of politics or of religion. And, you know, there's so many other kind of conflicts happening. So, you know, even lyrically, we were able to be creative and incorporate some other ideas that, you know, would give the songs some variety.
I think that's a really cool way to twist the meaning of that title.
Yeah, otherwise it just would have been about, green men and, spaceships.
Although it kind of would be refreshing to hear like a serious piece of metal sing about that. That would just be funny. I mean, Devin Townsend did Ziltoid, so why not, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, Devin, yeah, he can, he's amazing, man. He can get away with it.
So let's talk a little bit about the personnel on War of the Worlds. Johnny Macaluso. How long have you been wanting to work with that guy?
I mean, I've known Mac for years, and we've become good friends, and always talked about doing something. We get along great, and doing this solo record was like the perfect. I mean, he was the first guy I called. Mm-hmm. I said, all right, let's call J Mac and see what he's up to. So yeah, it was perfect. It gave us the chance to work together.
Oh, so like, what was? Did you like write the drum parts for him, or did you encourage him to just do his own thing? Like, how did that go?
Well, I mean, with all the guys, I would spend that time writing, and as I'm writing, I'm doing demos of the stuff mm-hmm. with, the drum machine, in the ballpark of what it's supposed to be, doing some bass, the rough keyboard and the rough orchestral section. So the demo is a pretty good representation of what the final product would be. But it's like, yeah, everybody, put your own voice on it and do your own thing. Just keep it within the confines of what the song is. I mean, if it's a triplet, don't make it 16th note, just keep the feel the same. But, if you got a cool idea for a beat, or you have a cool idea for a fill, a bass line, any of that stuff, it's like, yeah, do your thing.
Who is this Riz Castellano character? Where did you find that guy? He sounds great.
Rick, yeah, good dude, great singer. And I had met him years and years ago. Every so often I'll get together with guys I grew up with, and bands in high school, and just friends that I've jammed with over the years. And every so often we'll just hang out, a couple drinks, and just jam on some old stuff, some Sabbath and Priest or Rush, Maiden, that kind of stuff. And one of my friends knew Rick and said, oh, my buddy Rick wants to come down. You should check him out. He's a good singer. And I said, yeah, great, that's cool. So one day we just jammed and kind of became friends, and I thought he was really great. And I thought, yeah, if I ever do something, a solo record, I'm going to call Rick. So when I started doing this, gave him a call, and we just started working together on it.
Wow, so you just happened to know him.
Yeah. I mean, this whole thing was like, yeah, just about friends, guys that I've known for a while, and guys that I obviously respect as players, and, that kind of thing. I wanted it to be that, mm-hmm. more like a bunch of friends in the studio having fun, making music.
And yet it sounds so huge and epic.
Yeah, there's a lot of tracks on there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of shit going on, but that was the point of the whole thing. Mm-hmm. It was a solo record, and it was about building this sonic landscape, and with the orchestra and the guitar, and so it was like no big deal to pile the tracks on. It was supposed to be that kind of thing.
It was really cool to hear a BLS guy, a Black Label Society guy, collaborating with you on this. Like, that was not expected.
Well, I've known JD. We went to high school together.
Oh, okay.
So I've known him for, half my life. And he lives a couple minutes down the street from me. And over the years, we'll always run into each other. And it's like, oh, man, we got to do something. And, but I'd always been busy with the band. And obviously he was busy with Zach and Black Label. But when I did, decide to do this, kind of checked in, gave him a call, and he was around, and, he was up for it. So that worked. I mean, everything worked out really cool with all the guys. It was definitely smooth sailing. Did
you play the keyboards on the album?
Yep. Kinda.
Kinda? What does that mean?
No. I'm not bad. I'm not bad. I started playing piano when I was 12, and, I'm okay. Mm-hmm. That's why there's no keyboard solos. But, I didn't want there to be. It was more a guitar thing.
Yeah.
And a lot of the orchestral stuff, some of it's playing and some of it is, editing and programming. So it's a little mix. But I did not do the keyboards on fucking robots.
That was my next question. How'd you put that together?
That was my buddy.
Okay, so can you walk us through that? Because that's one of the standout moments on the album, just because it's like a what the hell just happened moment, and it works so well. like how'd you guys put that together?
Well, years ago, I remember my kids listening to some of that, electronic, that dubstep, and I wasn't familiar with it at the time. Shit, it might have been 10 years ago or whatever. And, my first reaction was, what the hell is that noisy shit? And then I listened more, I'm like, wow, that's pretty heavy. It's got this big drop, and it's like, there's no guitars there, but that's still got some balls to it. And when I started doing the solo record, I'm like, what if you took some of that and put some guitars on it and, tried to get the orchestra in there and maybe even a vocal, just smash all these things together and see. So a good friend of mine, Marco, who goes by the name Sciatica, and he's a, electronic guy, and I gave him a call, and I said, hey, man, what if we did this? So, we worked out a couple things and kind of came up with the robots thing, which I thought, was fun. It was cool. It was totally different, but I think it still fits. It is definitely different, but I think it fits within what the album is.
Yeah, and it also works together, like, as a song. Like, it doesn't, like, it is unexpected, but it doesn't sound out of place or forced. Like, it sounds fluid.
Yeah, I think because the orchestra still is in there, and the guitars and the drums, so there is still, the flavor of the record and the sonic, the sound of everything. It's just that, okay, the keyboards now are, going in this opposite direction. So, yes, to me, I listen to it, it makes me laugh still. I'm like, yeah, that's different, but that's cool. I don't care what no one says. I think that's cool.
What do your kids think of it?
Yeah, they dig it. I think they probably dig it just because it's me.
Really?
Nah, they dig it. They all listen to a lot of different stuff now, too, anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, man, I had it in here a couple times, cranking in the studio, and, kids pop their head, and it's like, what's that? I'm like, yeah, that's my new tune. Like, wow, that's cool.
That sounds like another great problem to have. Like, I'm reminded of a photo that was floating around the internet a couple years ago of Tom from Slayer, and they're in an awards ceremony or something, and his daughter's looking at him like he's a big dork. Like, you could be in Slayer, and your daughter will still think you're a loser.
Yeah. Yeah, man, that's nuts. Yeah, but just like when we were young, whatever my parents were listening to, I totally didn't think it was cool. Mm-hmm. Big band or whatever. I was into metal, so, every generation's a little different. But I think, I kind of brought my kids up on the stuff that I like and the best I could. So they're still familiar with it. They're still familiar with Metallica or Rush a little bit, and all the film music I listen to. I remember working on some of the pieces of this album, my son would pop his head in the studio. It's like, oh, Dad, why are you stealing Star Wars music? I'm like, no, I'm not stealing. But, no, it's all good. Kids are great.
That's awesome. So, like, another track on the album that really stood out to me, and there's a bunch of excellent songs, but, like, another standout was Jinn. And, like,
Jinn.
Yeah, like, I hear Arab strings there. I hear something that sounds like a hammered dulcimer.
Yes.
I hear some vocal melismata. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, it's all those things. Again, just trying to make every song, still within that War of the Worlds, and that one, yeah, maybe leaning towards that war of religion thing, and having some of that Middle Eastern quality to it. So, putting it together, it's like, okay, I'm going to have this middle section, and really going to break it down with some ethnic percussion, some of those instruments. Might be I don't remember what's in there. But there's a lot of that kind of thing going on. Mm-hmm. And again, with the orchestra a little bit, and the guitar to kind of still keep it in line with the rest of the record. But yeah, it was just kind of trying to paint a picture of that kind of vibe. And I think putting some of those exotic instruments in there kind of gives it that cool flavor.
So, like, are those actual, like, is that an actual hammered dulcimer that I hear, or are those actual frame drums that are on the album?
You tell me.
I think it's hard to tell.
Yeah,
they sound legit to me.
Nice. Yeah, most of that stuff is samples and that kind of thing.
Okay.
But even when I'm doing that stuff, if I can put a real cymbal swell in, or if I can put some kind of real percussion underneath, mm-hmm. or something just to give it a little bit of that human touch, that I think that helps too. I wish I had a live string section here in the studio that could layer on top of everything too. But you do whatever you can do to make it believable, and if you can add something human, always try to add it.
It seems like every time that you do this orchestral stuff, it becomes less. It becomes more difficult to tell every time whether it's a real orchestra or not.
Yeah, I mean, the technology now is really good, and I spend a lot of time doing that stuff. So as far as editing and building and, taking it instrument by instrument and making everything breathe, just from doing it for so long, it's still time-consuming, but I think I kind of have it where I'm comfortable and I can make it sound the way, or as close to the way as I hear it, as I want it to sound. But it's definitely because of the technology. There's definitely so many great libraries out there, and even the recording software, the MIDI editing. There's just great things you can do now. You just got to spend the time.
So what can we expect on War of the Worlds Part 2?
The same kind of thing. Everything was written at the same time, so a lot of those themes are throughout everything. Obviously the songs are different. There's a couple different kind of songs, but for the most part, yeah, it's similar. It's similar because it was all written at the same time, and it's not like Part 2 is leftover. Mm-hmm. It's not like, let's just take the bet. It wasn't that. It was like, well, these songs work together, and these other ones work together, so let's just do it like that. So, yeah, similar kind of thing, different songs, and, yeah, there's some great stuff for Part 2 as well.
How long are we going to have to wait for that one?
I don't know. I mean, it depends on how this one does, and it wouldn't take much time, though. Mm-hmm. Everything's pretty much written, and a lot of it is recorded. So as far as finishing up, yeah, we're not talking a lot of time. So who knows, maybe next year? I don't know.
Well, you do it at your own pace, and I'm looking forward to hearing it.
All right, fantastic.
Michael Romeo, what a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to talk to me.
Yes, man, thank you.
Absolutely. You enjoy the rest of your day.
All right, man, you too.
Thank you. And that was our chat with Michael Romeo. Michael Romeo's upcoming solo album, War of the Worlds Part 1, will drop worldwide on July 27th via Music Theories Recordings. Please remember to subscribe to our podcast in order to get notified of all of our interviews, and also don't forget about our Talking Perspectives weekly podcast discussion. And of course, make sure that you look for us and like us on Facebook and Twitter, and you can also subscribe to us on YouTube. And of course, please check out our website at sonicperspectives.com. Once again, this is the Gonzo, and we're going to be taking you out with a song from Michael Romeo's solo album, War of the Worlds Part 1. This song is called Black. Weapons out of desperation.